Good evening. How are you? My name is Chesrek, and I just want to do a quick rejoinder about just concluded US African Leadership Summit. I think this is just my my take on it, and I'm sure most of you have been following. Our president and 49 other presidents were here for the last 3 days. By the way, the conference just ended yesterday. So when the conference ended yesterday, I think there was a closing ceremony by President Joe Biden with a lot of promises. Let me actually bring you up to speed. This US Africa Leadership Summit was started by Obama in 2014. So the last 2 years of Obama, that was the first one. And over the last 8 years or so, there's never been, because Trump took over in 2016 up to 2020, American politics took over. So there's never been really anything that is substantial or substantive that we can say so that happened between 2014 to 2022 now. So this is the second one. This is the second one. And it is very impressive to say that I think I know most people will not agree, especially the Americans themselves, that this was kind of the Americans have woken up that the Chinese and the Russian influence is actually coming and slowly to penetrate Africa. And I think they just realized that this is another moment that they need to really try to engage Africa in matters of economic security, peace, climate change. And I think that is one of the reasons that Joe Biden decided to call the African leaders to come to this summit this last 3 days that just ended yesterday. So my take being here, I have just three key things. There are so many promises that Americans normally do for the African presidents, and some of it sometimes are achieved, some of them are not achieved. Most American presidents normally, or mostly the American government, what they do is they engage the Africans through their private companies, the non-governmental organizations, particularly the USAid. And this is a particular case now where we are yet to know the particular discussions or information that were really discussed by the presidents while they were having several engagements with President Biden. So my take is this. I know probably some of you read the scanned part of it. If you look at the summary, which kind of I can narrow it down to our perspective, Nyumbani, Africa is this continent that everyone is salivating for. You know, everyone is this kind of the strategic position of Africa now based on resources. Nikama, that very beautiful lady everyone is trying to date, or that lady everyone is trying to look or to achipendekeze and to be able to gain access. And it is, I don't think to some extent there is 100% genuineness na wazungu, because they are interested in their economic or geostrategic things that are happening in Africa. And one of it, and that is why when you see the engagement of the Chinese, the engagements of the Russians, it is just the resources. So my take to this is what the African leaders think, because when you are that important, you have that negotiating power to ask or to lobby for something more important. For instance, now when you look at issues of climate change, the greatest polluters in climate change are the developed countries, the Russia, the China, the Americans, the Indians. So Africa is not one of the contributors of climate change. Yet we are suffering from the greatest impact of climate change. So there should be some more negotiations, and I hope this is maybe something we will see forward, because we haven't seen really the details that happened. And in this case, if you look at some of the key areas that they were discussed, and I'll just mention three of them, which may be key to Africa, to boost economic engagements. So what is economic engagements? Economic engagements really means opening of trade. Opening of trade means lessening restrictions on imports of things that can come to the US. US has a good market. Let's be honest. The dollar market is really lucrative. Even the Chinese, without the US market, I don't think even China would have been that super powerful, because they export so many things. And that is one of the reasons you see China is coming to Africa to get resources. They go and manufacture into finished products, and then they export it, majority of it, to America. And that is where they make a lot of money. That's how Chinese make a lot of money. And that is how Chinese have been able to, or China has become one of those superpower countries. So I don't know when you talk about economic engagement, because this is where Africa with its full resources can lobby for a lot of things to come to the continent of Africa. And if we narrow it down, for instance, to the country Kenya, you know, we are a country with really good potential in agriculture, information technology, and other natural resources. We could tap into that, and we look what we can do to be able to harness that potential of resources, at the same time accessing the markets here. So that is one area that I think was discussed. It was the highest priority in that discussions, boosting economic engagements, of which economic engagements really doesn't just happen like that. It has to really take a lot of discussions, a lot of givings, a lot of give outs, in terms of, you know, what negotiation, what policies can be accepted and what cannot be accepted, what restrictions can be removed, what restrictions cannot be removed. So that is the most important one. The second one is about democracy. US talks about democracy all the time in these engagements. I think we proved to the world this year that we are a very seriously democratic country. We had a very smooth transition. We had a very smooth transition from one president to the other. That one I think Kenya has done very far. There are other countries in Africa that are yet to maybe do some things. COVID, you guys know that COVID did not really affect Africa as such, as much as most of the medicine and medical products in Itoka huku. We did have the impact of COVID as compared to the Western countries. I think the other very important is food security. Joe Biden himself admitted that Africa has 60% of the arable land. I want you to remember that. And I've mentioned this in several of my engagements. Africa has 60% of arable land. What does that mean? That tells you there is a lot of potential in food production that can feed the world, leave alone even feeding itself. You know, this perennial lack of food in Africa sometimes is because of our problems. We really don't know how to the chain of food distribution, whether it is from the farm to the storage to the processing. But Africa itself can produce enough food for the world, but we have never taken or paid attention to that. So when Joe Biden was addressing the African president, he mentioned that we need to engage them in more irrigation projects, in more technology, in more inputs. You know, South Africa, for instance, has a lot of American companies. One of the reasons why South Africa has developed so much is because they have direct engagement. And most of you probably, if you are following it, South Africa has a good business relationship with the US, and that's why they're doing very well economically. And if this can be replicated across Africa or a bit of the regions, for instance, the East Africa, we can actually do well. We have resources in that region of East Africa, Congo, Kenya, you know, Tanzania, Uganda, now with oil, Sudan, Ethiopia with the manpower itself, Kenya with a lot of educated workforce. Those are the areas that I hope going forward, it will not just be yesterday's meeting. They're gonna proper engagements with the US government, especially on this kind of policies going forward. So you know, the final one that I want to mention is the global health collaboration in terms of global health. I know USAID have been doing a lot of things. So the USAID has been doing a lot of charity work. It's research. There is quite a number of research in the country, and I hope when they talk about global engagements in health, they really partner up with us properly, because our healthcare system is still way behind in terms of technology, in terms of medical approach, so many things. So when it comes to collaborations, I mean, those are some of the things that I'm looking forward to, you know, seeing in the future engagements. And one final comment that I want to make, that I've watched it for the last maybe 10 years with especially different presidents. I watched Kibaki when he came to power. I watched Uhuru when he came to power. Now we have fresh President William Ruto coming to power. One of the biggest mistakes that we do as African countries, and even most of your elected officials, whenever they come here, they don't do what we call a follow-up. a follow-up in most of these engagements are very, 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 very important. Whether it is collaboration with schools, whether it's collaboration with companies, this country, they really need a follow-up. You cannot just come and have a great meeting and then go back and sit back and expect the magic to happen. Never. It will take a lot of hard work to convince these people because they already have systems in place. So for them, change is not very easy for them. You have to convince them beyond reasonable doubt. I mean it. I truly mean it. You have to convince them beyond reasonable doubt that, you know what, this is the best place. And my final point is the location of Kenya. Kenya is a very strategic location. I mean, we are one of the most developed countries in sub-Saharan Africa, but there are certain things that are still slowing us down. We still have a lot of bureaucracy and red tape. I want you to listen to that. We have a lot of bureaucracy and red tape in starting a business in Kenya. If you want to start a business here in the United States, and I'll give you an example here in North Carolina, you go to the Secretary of State, you register, one-page paper. That is what Rwanda is doing. One-page paper, and you incorporate a business. In fact, they don't ask you to pay for taxes until maybe when you do the business. I want us to think about that, because unless we have a proper way of attracting investors and businesses to come, if we still have a lot of red tape, I want to say that again, if we still have a lot of bureaucracy in the process of starting businesses and attracting people to come to Africa, attracting people to come to do business in Kenya in particular, we will never go anywhere. Most of these engagements will be just photo ops, very good, met the president of the US, we meet these companies, we meet the major companies, but nothing will happen. Because they will come and read. I mean, these people, they are not stupid. They really read what is in the country, what is in the tax system. Especially when it comes down to tax incentives. We don't do anything about it, we will never go anywhere. And I've seen it. I've seen over the last 10 years, you know, too many African presidents wanakuja hapa hivi, they do very well engagements, they get so many promises, they get so many partnerships, but they don't follow up and they don't go do reduce the regulations. So that's my take, and I hope this will help us, at least help you understand what was the perspective of this US Africa Leadership Engagement Forum. And once we get the details of particulars, especially now if they agreed on AGOA, if AGOA is going to be extended, because I don't think even they got the time to discuss much about AGOA, because too many engagements sometimes can bury those ones in the sand. So let us hope the most important things, especially to open up the US markets, were discussed. And if they did that, then that's a positive thing to Africa. That is a positive thing to Kenya. That is a positive direction that we can hope for sure we can access the markets in this country, and we will progress as a country or as a continent to a better and prosperous future. Asante sana. My name is Chesrek.